let's do some quick intros and then get on into the conversation. So, like I said, I work for Greentown Labs, which has this mission of supporting climate tech entrepreneurs who are tackling these really difficult climate and sustainability challenges. And one part of what we do is connect startups like Kebotix with our corporate partners like Johnson Matthey. Jill Becker is CEO of Kebotix, which is a US-based technology platform company for new chemicals and materials. They are Greentown Labs neighbors, so we're based in Somerville, Massachusetts. I believe they're based in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And then we have Maurits van Tol, who is the Chief Technology Officer at Johnson Matthey. Johnson Matthey is a global leader in sustainable technologies. They've been really leading in their field for more than 200 years and just bring this wealth of experience and expertise into their engagements with startups. Recently, and I suspect this isn't news to anybody in this audience, but recently Johnson Matthey and Kebotix announced an agreement to explore developing the next generation of coatings for catalytic converters together. And this is then the context that sets us up for this conversation on the role that startups play in helping the world to meet these really big sustainability challenges. So with that, you two, I'm going to shift over to the first question I have here. You know, I think we can all agree sustainability is critical. It's critical for the planet. It's critical for the people who live on it, perhaps more importantly. And it poses this really unique set of economic risks, but more importantly, opportunities. There's a whole lot of opportunity there too. And I know that both Kebotix and Johnson Matthey have really placed sustainability on the forefront of your corporate visions. It's especially relevant today, I think, as many UN country leaders are gathering next week for COP26. And so with all of this, I think it would be fantastic if we could hear a bit from each of you on what your corporate visions are and why you think sustainability is important. Maurits, perhaps we'll start with you and then we can flip over and hear from Jill.
Yeah, sure. And that's a very good question. Sustainability, as you said, is very important to Johnson Matthey because we're a clean tech company. We're developing new technologies that our customers can implement to cater for the needs of a whole series of societal trends and transformations that we see, whether it's about, in energy from oil and gas, all the way to hydrogen, for example. When you look at mobility from internal combustion engines via hybrid solutions, battery electric vehicles, fuel cells, powered vehicles, but also the production of the base chemical building blocks that society needs and where Johnson Matthey has a long history in. But of course, we want to decarbonize those processes as well. So the drive towards low carbon emitting technologies is the third transformation. And then, of course, circular economy, making sure that we keep chemicals, that we keep precious metals and what have you in the cycle to make sure we can reuse the materials that our customers use and implement to produce all this clean energy and to produce a clean chemical. So sustainability in that sense is part of our portfolio for a very long time. Our motto is for a cleaner and healthier world for today and for the next generations. Our horizon is, as you said, we're 200 years old. We want to focus on the next 200. So sustainability is in that sense also really important. And of course, we're part of the race to net zero. We have just got approval for our science-based targets. We have set all kinds of targets that are related to how we can contribute to the UN Sustainable Development Goals, etc., etc. I think sustainability is very important to all of us. It's a very important part of our purpose.
Yeah. Congratulations on that. I know it's no easy feat to get that approval, both to develop and then get the approval on the science-based targets. Jill, how about you?
Well, similar to Maurits, Kebotix was founded in order to help find these solutions to these urgent world issues. We wanted to usher in a new way of innovation to discover entirely new chemistries and materials that are less toxic and more sustainable. And we think ourselves as an ethical tech platform company. So we wanted to eradicate some of these century-old bottlenecks when it comes to how people do experiments, which are often just shot in the dark, and using our AI, machine learning, and robotics to increase the speed of discovery, to increase the positive results of outcome, and at the end, bring better products to market faster. So the challenges that we're all facing isn't just climate change, but food sustainability, carbon emissions, and these are really urgent and pressing challenges that we must come together to tackle. Lower toxicity, more sustainable products, and preferably products made from biofeedstocks.
Yeah. So clearly both of your organizations have sustainability like deeply embedded in your individual motivations and objectives and vision. And then at the same time, sustainability doesn't happen in a vacuum. It's not something that a single person or a single organization is going to be able to scale meaningfully independently. And so in this context, I think it would be really interesting to hear a little bit about how you see collaboration throughout the supply chain as critical into advancing these individual sustainability missions.
So you want me to start, Nina, or?
Let's go for it. Yeah.
Okay. I can give it a go, and then Jill,
Yeah.
you know, feel free to build on that, of course. So when you look at the complexity that we are facing as society is quite amazing. I don't think in my long history in the chemical industry I have seen so many transformations like I just listed happen at the same time. And not only one or two countries, some small trends, but also global, because climate change affects us all. It's a global problem, and it needs global solutions, or solutions that we develop that can be deployed all across the planet. And I think when you look at that, plus the fact that value chains, to your point, Nina, are very complex, and you need many different players to work together, to collaborate. And then the third element is time is of the essence. Net zero 2050, it's only 29 years away. And that means it's all hands on deck right now before it's too late. And so if you have this time element, the multitude of technology solutions that we're looking at, and then the breadth and the number of value chains, and you bring that all together, you see the complexity. And no one company can bring all the solutions that we need, that the planet needs, on his or her own, on its own. It just doesn't work. So collaboration was important in the past, but currently it's crucial, it's vital. Without collaboration and all kinds of consortia that approach actually the big ticket items, the big investments that we need to make all these transformations turn into reality. Without this collaboration, we won't get there. So it's crucial. And we are also then widening our innovation ecosystem, so to speak, as Johnson Matthey, very, very much, because we appreciate that, you know, we're a piece of the puzzle. I think an important piece, but it's just a piece.
Yeah. Jill, is there anything you'd add to that?
Yeah, no, I agree with Maurits that collaboration is really, really important. And if you step back for a second and think about what do we really want from supply chains? We want excellent customer service, amazing fulfillment, efficiency, integration, and monitoring of product life cycles, and many other factors. And I think we can only achieve that if there really is collaboration. You know, supply chain really impacts about 50% of greenhouse gas emissions. Some estimate even as high as 80. Yeah. So reducing the carbon footprint of the supply chain is ever increasingly important. And every player in the entire supply chain, Kebotix, Johnson Matthey, many others, do have a role to play. And for Kebotix, we think one key way is materials discovery can play a huge role in the supply chain in terms of collaboration as well through green engineering and chemistry. By discovering and developing less toxic, greener, more sustainable materials, we are from the get-go enabling suppliers, which are a part of the supply chain, to be sourcing more and more sustainable materials. But you can't do it alone.
Yeah. So collaboration is critical. And both Kebotix and Johnson Matthey clearly have this deep culture of innovative technology and sustainability. In your perspectives, can you explain what makes each of you unique and why you have chosen to partner with one another? And Jill, perhaps we'll start with you for this one.
Well, one of the reasons why I'm sharing the stage today with Maurits is our collaboration supports the United Nations Sustainability Goals, which I had already mentioned. We want to champion this global effort that every project, every partnership that we as Kebotix engage in adhere really to these goals. And it sounds like, I don't want to speak for Maurits, but that Johnson Matthey really feels the same. And the way we go about doing it is using our AI and robotics to really accelerate and speed up the discovery and production of these sustainable materials and chemicals in order to solve these big world challenges. Yeah, it's all about the tech and sustainability. I mean, just a few examples from our past year, we discovered new heat transfer fluids to be used in EV charging stations for petrol corporations. We've done fluorescent dyes to be used for microorganism detection for a medical device company. For ourselves, we discovered new electrochromic molecules to be used for smart windows. And recently we announced development with Bayer, where we use our custom automated and autonomous platform for the discovery of new ag chemicals for crop protection. These are all some examples to the heart of what we like to do here.
And for us is, of course, I also believe you need to look as a company, what are your core competences? What are you really good at? And of course, for us, it is when we look at the societal transformation, in discussion with our customers, Johnson Matthey can translate that into what would be the catalyst, what would be the layout of a new process design or what have you, that would solve, the problems of our customers, the unmet needs, and basically then when they implement, help decarbonizing the chemical industry or mobility or what have you. And so we can translate the customer unmet needs into the what needs to be developed, what we would like to have out of such a project. But then, of course, the approach on how to find those solutions as quickly and efficiently as possible. Because as I said before, there's so many platforms you would like to look into at the same time. That is why we then team up with companies that can bring something that we don't have or insufficiently master. And in this case, that is Kebotix with their machine learning and AI approaches. So I think it's always good to know your own strengths and to find partners that can, fill in the gaps that you have and team up.
Yeah, I think that's a point that resonates so much, right? Because just because we need so much to happen does not mean that we need one organization to do everything. Instead, it's a matter of looking internally and saying, what are we really good at and what are we going to bring to the table, and then partner with others to make sure that everything that needs to get done does. So on that note, like really digging into the collaboration, tell us a little bit more about your partnership together that I sort of teased at the beginning here. Share a little more on that. Jill.
Well, I can start maybe on what we work on, and then Jill, you can explain a little bit how you approach it. Would that, So for us, when you look at catalytic converters for internal combustion engines, but also for localized power production, for example, and also these engines are still used in plug-in hybrids and what have you. We want to make sure that when you look at these catalytic converters, that they convert as much of the pollutants that come out of an internal combustion engine as we can, including particle emissions. And we're a pioneer. And for the last 50 years, we have been optimizing these catalytic converters. And to give you a flavor, we have about a third of the world market of all the cars. They are equipped with the catalytic converter made by Johnson Matthey. And we take out 40 metric tons of pollutants every minute of the day over the last 50 years. So that gives you a little bit of the impact of what our scientists and the catalysts we develop, the solutions we develop, what they have on society. But of course, you can always do more. Regulations are sharper and sharper all the time. And that means that, and also these catalytic converters are incredibly complex catalytic systems. And when you have such a multi-dimensional problem. It's just very helpful if you have a company who can help you with, targeted developments, developments that really find and attack the root cause of the issues, and find solutions as efficiently and quickly as possible. Yeah. And that's why we teamed up.
Yeah, thank you, Maurits. I mean, as Kebotix, we're so excited to be collaborating with Johnson Matthey on really developing the next generation of coatings for these catalytic converters. The idea that we would be helping to reduce emissions, both in industry and for cars, is just super exciting. And we're really proud that Johnson Matthey's entrusting our lab of the future, our AI capabilities, and the entire human, non-human team to enhance your digital transformation in the chemical industry. And it's really a true collaboration, right? We use our tools, but we learn from Johnson Matthey's institutional data that has a vast history. Use those lessons learned to predict better performing catalysts. And our AI will augment Johnson Matthey's current approach by providing these new ideas via our AI for better designs that will enable Johnson Matthey to develop higher performing products. And Maurits had talked about regulations, and yes, they're getting, and I think rightfully so, tighter and tighter. It's so you have to be able to speed up your discovery, preferably at a reduced cost, because if you're a for-profit company, especially if you're public, your number one job is to increase shareholder value, and that's sometimes tough to do when a lot of R&D just you prove that that part didn't work. I do think we talked just previously about supply chains and collaborations. The governments of the world can really help companies. They need to work together in unison in order to also move these goals forward. It can't just be in a vacuum that the governments do one and the companies do another. It takes an entire ecosystem.
Building on your mention of Lab of the Future there, Jill, and perhaps like going a little more high level again, I'd be interested to hear, when you think about the future of chemicals and chemistry, how critical is the role of AI and machine learning and advanced robotics and in this Lab of the Future?
I think it's a must. I mean, I invented chemicals during grad school in 1999, okay? And in 2019, I received a check for that. Now, it's great that I got paid for my PhD, but the point is, you shouldn't have to wait 20 years to monetize a good idea. I had invented chemicals that went into the chips that you and I use every day. So I think AI and machine learning is a must. You don't have to really use Kebotix if you don't want to, but I think the industry as a whole really needs to embrace it because of the massive impact it can have. And the way we think of it is that our self-driving lab mimics a chemist's brain. That's our AI. And the hands in this case are the robot. And the AI really can think about areas in chemical spaces or chemical areas that humans haven't done yet. If you think about how big is chemical space, I don't know how big it is. It could be 10 to the 60, 10 to the 80. It's massive. And if you then take all the patents filed, both in pharma and in materials and in chemicals, those are tiny dots. It's vast space. So we wanted something, an AI software or an AI brain that can really look in areas that no human has thought of. And we really wanted to revolutionize this trillion-dollar global materials market. So yeah, I think AI, machine learning, advanced robotics are critical to the future of discovery, to chemistry. And the great thing is for Kebotix, we feel like this lab of the future is here for us today, our futuristic lab using now. And I welcome anyone to come visit us here in Massachusetts.
Maurits, does that resonate?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's vital because, again, the reason that I sketched earlier on in the discussion, all those transformations going on at the same time, all of them do not have one solution. Yeah, there's many different solutions, whether it's on the move away from fossil fuels towards a hydrogen economy, or the different types of fuel cells, or the different type of batteries we use today, but also what's still in the development pipeline. It's unbelievable what's going on the clean tech front around the world. And that means if you can, as I said before, if you can predict a little bit what the most promising routes are, based on economics, toxicity, whatever, if you can predict that, it brings so much speed in, because you reduce waste. It's basically helping you with your lean R&D principles. Yeah. And I think it makes it much more targeted. And I think that's really good. And what we haven't mentioned yet is it's 24/7, because more and more you can steer your experiments and do the programming and what have you, and work on converting data into information remotely. And of course, we have invested heavily in that as Johnson Matthey over the last few years, and that has really paid off during the COVID pandemic, because our scientists were extremely productive. We can measure the productivity, and they were more productive than pre-COVID, because we had just introduced a lot more equipment that could work 24/7 and could be steered remotely. And I think these are fantastic investments that have a very quick return, make it also better, healthier, easier for the people to that work have to work then remotely. They don't need to travel. They don't need to be together during a pandemic, and it's just proven to be very, very helpful. And I think this is an element of how we do R&D in the chemical industry. It will not go away. It will only proliferate more and more.
Yeah. Gosh, different context, but I wouldn't mind having some advanced robotics to help me respond to emails 24/7. I think that would make me more efficient. So AI, machine learning, advanced robotics, all really, really critical for the future. Let's talk about the role of humans, right? What role will humans continue to play in both the near and distant future in this work?
Yeah, I think for me, it's interesting, this question, right? Because of course, also when we started to intensify our work in this area, you sometimes get feeling like, or get questions in your open forum on, so where does it leave us as scientists? And I think my reply is we need all the science brain power around the world to tackle all those clean tech issues that we need to solve. So there is a shortage of people, and I don't want that time to be wasted on a lot of stuff that we can automate, that machine learning, AI can help with, robots can help with, etc., etc. It is this collaboration between the human being and how you do the experiments and how you do the modeling and how you do predict what kind of chemistries to look at and how these chemistries will develop over time. I think that is really very important, that it's not one instead of the other. It is really the human being, the scientist, using those very modern tools to speed up the research and have a higher success rate. And I think that's very stimulating, because what you want to do as a scientist, you want to invent solutions that you then see actually be applied in industry and help decarbonize society. So I think it's it's all hands on deck and so much going on. It's end for me. Yeah.
What do you think, Jill?
No, I agree with everything that Maurits said. I think of these as advanced tools for humans to use in order to be even more creative and speed up their work, so be more productive. It's just been incredible. I mean, we have a tool that we call K-Interact, so Kebotix Interact, and that really is the tool that we use to interact with our robots and our AI. And it's sometimes very interesting to see. And the human can have as much or as little control as they want. I just think, I always feel like we're a little bit out of time. We needed these chemicals that we're looking for yesterday. And, as humans, we do have to sleep. And I know in the US, we don't really have a good work-life balance, but I'm hoping one of these days that will happen. And I think these are just tools, just like in the past, a calculator or the internet are tools that are beneficial if you use them correctly. And it's very exciting to be able to, I've been working from home since March 4th
Yeah.
of 2020. And I've never been more productive, I think in part because there is no longer a social cue to go get a tea, a coffee, a meeting. And, I haven't figured out yet with back-to-back Zoom calls, when are you supposed to eat?
Or get a glass of water.
Anything. It's kind of odd, and I'm a little sad that Google hasn't invented a drop-down that is, 9:25 or 9:05. There should be more during COVID choices that you don't have to hard key, but humans are always going to play a key role in AI, machine learning, and we just also have to make sure that we take the bias out of data. I mean, one of the dirty secrets in science is that papers and patents aren't really reproducible. And it always made sense to me why patents would be, because that's your bread and butter, and you might leave a trade secret or know-how out of that. But papers really should be reproducible. So why would you take all the papers in the world and shove them into a database for your AI to learn from? You would need to first clean the bias out of the data and or have an ability to create your own data from scratch from semi-empirical methods, which you also would have to automate if you want to continue to speed it up. So humans and machines are working together for the benefit of humanity.
Yeah. For those who like fiction, I just finished a book called Clara and the Sun, which is sort of a philosophical meditation that relates to this conversation that we're having right here. So it's really fun to be digging into this now with the two of you in a slightly less fictional and less philosophical manner. So we've heard about how science and technology are really essential as we move towards a more sustainable future. I think that's easy for everyone to agree on. And then we also know that STEM industries are experiencing a real talent gap at the moment. How are your two organizations thinking about tackling this specific challenge?
Yeah, so from Johnson Matthey, it's of course a recognition. We're a science company. We have 15,000 employees, 1,700 are in R&D and technology deployment. So it's a very high percentage, and we thrive because of the incredible talent base that we have in-house and where we are connected to in this startup space and in this whole innovation ecosystem. When you look at the problems society is facing, they need scientists, technologists to solve these issues. STEM subjects are incredibly important because as a STEM scientist, you can really have direct influence on tackling all those different issues that humanity is facing. So what we do is, of course, promote that view and vision, but also do that around, for example, our sites. We have a program called Science and Me, for example, where we try to also bring science and the importance of science to somewhat less privileged areas, for example, where maybe pupils would not think about going into science one way or the other in the future. And we want to make sure that, because it's all hands on deck, that we bring as many youngsters towards the sciences as we can, because that is really what society needs and what Johnson Matthey needs. Yeah, so that's one of the things that we are doing. Yeah, and we we give a lot of presentations and highlight everywhere where we can the importance of the STEM subjects. Yeah.
Yeah, no, STEM is super important. I mean, I myself have a PhD in chemistry, so I've drunk that Kool-Aid a long time ago. And, since I was a little girl, all I actually ever wanted to be was an inventor. And I thought that science and entrepreneurship could get me there. So you can imagine how excited I am to be the CEO of Kebotix, where I'm sitting on top of an IP factory. At Kebotix, we've been hiring people since 2017. The way we hire is we like to hire people that are curious and kind. And what we mean by that, the curious part, I live in New England, so we like to hire people that are wicked smart. That's it's sort of a New England slang. And by kind, we mean that they have an ability to talk about their craft, because we want people, we're inventing things in the real world. So the data engineers, the machine learning experts need to talk to our chemists, because at the end of the day, there's going to be a chemical for a certain application out there. And there needs to be that cross pollination. You can think of this as diversity of thought. So STEM jobs have really increased over the last 30 years by about 80%. But if you look at the recent Pew Research Center study, Black and brown that's only grown by about 18%. So we have actually partnered. One of the things recently that was announced, that we are the only industry partner for a new $15 million initiative founded by the NSF, and their one of the key objectives is to really do this robust outreach program that supports young scientific minds ranging from high school to recent college grads who didn't necessarily attend schools with undergraduate research programs. And I'm a core believer that every human being in the world actually is a scientist. Like, if you ever wondered how that works or how to make that better, you are a scientist and an entrepreneur. That's just at the core.
Yeah.
And we also partnered with the Rue Institute in order to be able to attract more jobs. And COVID has really shown us that since we're all working remotely, we can hire talent anywhere. It doesn't have to be these economic hubs like Silicon Valley and Boston. And we've expanded actually during COVID north of the border. So we have a S Corp in Canada, and we've been hiring a lot of talent up there in Toronto for a variety of reasons, including that the exchange rate is very beneficial to this company. And I know the talent pool up there is incredible, and the government of Canada is trying to turn Canada into the AI hub of the world. So they're spending hundreds of millions of dollars to teach AI and machine learning in schools. So it's easier to pick up that talent versus as a startup trying to steal talent from Google. We can't match technology.
Yeah. So much of what you both shared really resonates there. I know Greentown in our part of the world, we spend a lot of time talking about how there is so much need for people picking climate careers and science careers. Like we need everyone to be a part of it. And as we push forward the space and we push forward innovation, we need to make sure that we are in a very just and equitable manner, ensuring that everybody who wants to be at the table is able to be, because the need is there and there's opportunities for everyone to have fulfilling jobs in climate. So how do we help bridge that and make the jobs accessible? It's an ongoing discussion, and I love hearing it in all these different forums.
Well, Nina, we actually implemented a volunteer program at Kebotix where the company pays for several hours a month for employees to volunteer. And one of what we did is partner with an inner city school of mainly Black and brown kids, lead their STEM after school STEM clubs. And I've given talks there on STEM, on entrepreneurship. And I think the younger we can introduce children to STEM, the better. And I think from an educational point of view, if we want more people in STEM, we have to make the teaching of science and engineering better than it is. These route memorizations, I think that is very archaic. But if you really know your subject matter, you know how to teach that right from the get-go in a very hands-on way, and then the learning will happen more accidentally. I do think there needs to be a disruption of how STEM is taught in school in order to fill these jobs in the future.
And I think that's a very important point. We do these similar kind of outreach programs, as I said, and I think because it's again all hands on deck. We need to fill the pipeline with young talents, and like you say, Nina, everyone can contribute at all different levels. We need people that work in the technology providing industry and the engineering field for a very long time to go, because of all these transformations. And I think that is really very important. And I also feel that what Jill says is very important. You see all these youngsters, it's also within JM. Yeah, these citizen developers, they've grown up with all these computers and games and stuff. And the big advantage there is, of course, that really relates to the subject we're also discussing today. So teach them how very modern tools, modeling, simulation, all the stuff we talked about today, that we bring that to the forefront, so that they feel like, it's not just people in the white lab coat, with Schlenks and Erlenmeyers. No, it is also, the modeling part, big data, apps, all that kind of stuff. And I think that will also make it much sexier to study science. And I think that is what we need, because we need to attract the younger generation into this field. It's really important.
Yeah, we need to spice up the way science is taught.
Yeah.
To an earlier question, Nina, the way I think about it too, if let's say you are a company and you have 300 techs, right? Yeah. And now you have AI and machine learning that optimizes each piece of equipment that you have in house. So now you only need 50 techs. And instead of letting these people go, they can be retrained at higher levels in the STEM field. So I really think that the AI can help people grow in their career to more advanced levels throughout a company or within other companies. But I think AI can really help teach STEM as well.
Yeah, I love that. So we have time for one more question. And we've already started to speak to this last question that I have in mind. It's been a crazy 18 months. We have all learned a whole lot of lessons from the pandemic. And I'm interested, what has been the big takeaways for you? Jill, I know you have some feedback for Google Calendars, but what are your big takeaways, and what are your company's big takeaways from this new world that we're all operating in?
I think from my side, first of all, I'm incredibly proud of my colleagues, because we kept the labs running and the output was higher than pre-COVID, because of automation on the one hand, but also because they organize themselves. All of a sudden you see working in shifts, and who's working when, so that you don't have too many people in the lab at the same time, and that they all orchestrated that themselves. So that was incredibly impressive. The second thing is, of course, super happy that we have been betting big on automation, 24/7 remote in the time before and during COVID, because that brought immediate returns. And I think also when you look at when you zoom out a little bit, the appreciation of science in society has increased because of, for example, the AstraZeneca vaccine being developed in 12 months instead of 120 months. And people see, wow, if we can do that, we can tackle very nasty diseases and limit at least the number of fatalities and what have you. People see what science can contribute to our standards of living and taking away some of our fears and what have you. And I think that appreciation for science, we really need to make sure we build on that, as we discussed before, to bring in, the younger generation and more of them into the science and engineering space. So, I think science is more at the forefront and in a more positive connotation with society than it was before. I think that's also partially due to this very unfortunate disease.
Yeah, we're all seeing it and appreciating it in our day-to-day lives.
Yeah.
I mean, we got the company ready in February of 2020 because we felt like the leadership of our country and of our state did not really believe in science. And I believe that a virus doesn't believe in borders. it just wants to replicate and multiply. So we made sure everyone had, alcohol. As a chemist, I actually had these things at home for my family, but I want to make sure all my employees were safe at home and that internet worked. So if you're going to be great at science, the fact that we have the internet and can remotely and call into labs remotely, it was huge. I think everyone believed that digital innovation would happen one day. And when COVID hit, they're like, oh, it's here. I mean, we could work 24 hours a day and we're hiring and not really address all the inbound interest that we were getting. And it really showed us that we're really not tethered to any particular location when it comes to talent, that you can work across numerous time zones. And I'm so grateful to these vaccines that actually I was debating, did I make a mistake getting a chem degree? Because I think biochemistry is much, much cooler with these mRNA vaccines. It's just so exciting to be a part of it. And you can only imagine what the history books will be saying about it. The only thing I'm kind of waiting for is, after the 1918 flu pandemic, we had the roaring 1920s. And where's our roaring,
2022.
I mean, I see it actually just in investment. There is so much money to be placed right now out there. It is crazy. The lack of talent. And I think as a society, we really need to, especially in the US, it highlighted more inequalities than perhaps people didn't know about. Living conditions, that everyone needs a separate room if they're working and schooling from home, access to internet, good internet. It highlighted supply chain problems, right? There was lineouts for food, Clorox was missing, toilet paper was missing. Who hoards toilet paper? But there's a lot that was odd during COVID, and to navigate around that is great. And I think it was easier to do if you had money and a big house. So I think we have some choices to make in our society of what kind of society we want to be. And I think what happened during COVID, we shouldn't just walk away once everyone's vaccinated. I think it's important to take lessons and think about equality, equity for all.
Much more inclusive. And again, bringing in the diversity and that's all hands on deck. We also need it. The planet needs it. Completely agree, Jill.
And a forcing mechanism to get us all aligned around the vision for the world that we want to live in and the gap between what that world is and where we currently are. Well, both, we are at time. It was such a pleasure to talk to the two of you. I really enjoyed this conversation. I'm sure the audience did too. So a big thank you for the conversation today. And Greentown's so thrilled to work with both of your organizations.
Pleasure.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, audience.